The gaming industry accidentally created expectations that no developer can realistically satisfy, and until we understand how that happened, we're going to keep seeing the same cycle of hype, outrage, and disappointment every single year. Every major publisher for the past decade has been chasing the same dream. Build the next Fortnite, build the next Destiny, build the next live service giant that keeps players engaged for years. But instead, what happened? We saw Concord, Suicide Squad, Foam Stars, all these games cratered, and dozens more live service games were canceled before people even knew they existed. At first, you might be thinking that these games were bad or the companies were just greedy, but then another question started bothering me. If that's true, then why are good live service games struggling too? Helldivers 2, Marvel Rivals, Arc Raiders, Battlefield 6. These games saw huge engagement early on before player counts dropped sharply. These weren't all failures, but they all ran into the same wall. And I think I finally figured out what that wall actually is. I don't think it's greed from these corporations, and I don't think it's an oversaturated market. I think the industry spent 10 years creating players that no developer can realistically satisfy anymore. And you might be one of them. When people talk about the collapse of live service games, we always hear the same thing. The games were bad, and sometimes that's true. Concord launched into one of the biggest failures the industry has ever seen. Suicide Squad struggled to hold an audience almost immediately. Foam Stars disappeared from the conversation so quickly that a lot of people may be hearing about it for the first time here. You're welcome. It's easy to look at these games and come away with a simple conclusion. Players rejected them because they weren't good enough. But the more I looked into it, the less that explanation made sense. Because if bad games were the whole story, why are so many publishers making the exact same mistake? Think about who's involved here. Sony, Electronic Arts, Ubisoft, Warner Brothers, Microsoft, some of the biggest publishers in the entire industry. Companies with decades of experience, thousands of developers, and some of the largest budgets gaming has ever seen. These aren't studios that accidentally forgot how to make a video game. So why does this keep happening? Over the last 5 years, we've watched hundreds of live service projects get canceled, shut down, or quietly disappear before most players even knew they existed. Some died after launch, others spent years in development before studios decided that they simply weren't worth finishing. Billions of dollars have been spent chasing what was supposed to be gaming's most profitable business model, and yet the success stories seem to be getting rarer every year. That's what started bothering me. Because once something keeps happening across nearly every major publisher, it's probably not just a series of bad decisions anymore. It's probably a symptom of something bigger, and that's when I realized I had been asking the wrong question. Instead of asking, why do live service games keep failing, I think we should be asking, why does almost every company chasing live service eventually run into the exact same wall? Because if Sony, EA, Ubisoft, and Warner Brothers all hit that wall, maybe the wall isn't the game. Maybe the wall is the market that they've been trying to build the entire time. At this point, you could argue that the answer is obvious. Fortnite already exists. Why would anyone leave a game they spent years building an account in just to start over somewhere else? And honestly, I think that's part of it, but I don't think it's the whole story. Because publishers aren't stupid. Sony, EA, Ubisoft, Warner Brothers, all these companies know Fortnite exists. They're not spending hundreds of millions of dollars just because they somehow forgot who their competition is. So why do they keep trying? Why do we keep seeing the same strategy over and over and over again? I think it's because they're chasing something that at one point actually worked. Look at the games that changed the industry. Fortnite, League of Legends, Counter-Strike, Dota 2, Warframe, Destiny, World of Warcraft. These weren't just successful games. They became destinations. Players didn't simply just buy the game. They lived in them. Every night after work, every weekend, every new update, these games became routines. And if you're a publisher, that's the dream. Think about it. A traditional game gets one chance to make money. Someone buys it, maybe they buy an expansion, and eventually they move on. But a successful live service game is completely different. Every month a player stays, they might buy a battle pass, they might buy cosmetics, and they might even convince a friend to join. They become more invested, more attached, and more likely to come back. From a business perspective, that's an incredible model. So of course every publisher wanted one. The problem is, I don't think they understood why those games became successful in the first place. Because when you look at today's market, something immediately stands out. Most of the biggest live service games weren't built overnight. They weren't overnight sensations that instantly became content machines. They grew, slowly, year after year, update after update, and patch after patch. And that's when something clicked for me. Many publishers weren't trying to recreate Fortnite. Maybe they were trying to skip the almost 10 years it took to become what Fortnite is today. The more I looked at these failures, the less they looked like isolated disasters. Concord, Suicide Squad, Foam Stars, none of these titles were the problem. Well, maybe Concord was. Even all those projects that were quietly canceled before they ever even reached players, they weren't the problem either. They were symptoms. Because think about what all these publishers actually had. They had enormous budgets, some of the most experienced developers in the world, years of development, massive marketing campaigns, and in some cases, they even had the games that were actually good. Not perfect games, but good enough that they probably should have found an audience. Yet they all seemed to run into the exact same invisible ceiling. Players would show up, the game would explode, and everyone would be talking about it. And then almost as quickly as it arrived, people started leaving. And that's when I had realized I had been looking at this completely backwards. These games weren't really competing against each other. They were competing against everything the industry had taught players to expect over the last decade. Because for years, publishers weren't just making games. They've been shaping habits. Every battle pass, daily login reward, weekly challenge, limited time event, every exclusive skin, every countdown timer telling you that this item disappears forever. All of it was teaching players the same lesson. Come back tomorrow. There's always something waiting for you. And if you don't, you're gonna miss it. And at first it worked brilliantly. Player engagement skyrocketed. People stayed online longer, they checked in more often, and revenue kept growing. From a business perspective, it looked like the perfect system. But I don't think anyone stopped to ask a much more important question. What happens after years of conditioning millions of players to expect constant rewards? Because human beings are surprisingly good at adapting. In psychology, there's a concept called hedonic adaptation. And the idea is, the more often we experience something rewarding, the more normal it starts to feel. Think about buying your dream car. The first week, you can't stop looking at it. A few months later, it's just your car. The excitement fades, not because the car got worse, but because your brain got adjusted. The exact same thing happens with rewards. If a game gives you something exciting once every few months, it feels special. If it gives you something every week, you start expecting it. Every day, now it's a routine. And once something becomes routine, it stops feeling rewarding. So what do companies do? They don't slow down. They speed up. More events, more cosmetics, currencies, battle passes, collaborations, just more reasons to log in. And for a while that worked too. But every time they raised the price, they also raised the audience's expectations. Until eventually, they created a player base that no development team on the planet could realistically keep up with. And that's the trap. The industry didn't create bigger live service games. It created players who had been trained to expect endless novelty. And now, every new live service game launches with an impossible job. It isn't competing against another game, it's competing against years of habits, years of expectations, and an audience that has been taught that if there isn't something new waiting for them every time they log in, it's time to move on. But even after realizing all that, there was still one question I couldn't answer. If publishers spent years conditioning players to expect more and more content, why are new live service games struggling so quickly? Shouldn't a great new game be exciting? Shouldn't players be willing to invest in something fresh? And then I started looking at it from the player's perspective instead of the publisher's. Imagine you spent the last 5 years playing Fortnite. Not every day, but enough that you've built a history there. You have cosmetics, you've gone through seasonal events, collaborations, rank modes, live concerts, constant updates, constant progression. And whether you like Fortnite or not, that's an incredible amount of accumulated value. Now imagine someone asks you to leave all that behind and start playing a brand new live service game. What does that game launch with? 3 maps, 20 skins, 1 battle pass? Maybe a roadmap promising more content later? And that's not criticism of the developers, it's just reality. No studio on earth can launch with 10 years of content on day 1. And that's when something finally clicked for me. These games aren't starting from zero, they're starting from 10 years behind. Every new live service game enters a race where the finish line has been moving for over a decade. The industry didn't just raise the bar, it kept raising it every single year, and now that bar is almost impossible for anyone new to reach. I kept thinking about this, and eventually I realized it really isn't a gaming problem. It's something that we see everywhere. Imagine opening a restaurant. You've hired talented chefs, you spent millions on the building, and you believe that your food is excellent. And then you discover that your biggest competitor is an all-you-can-eat buffet right next door. They have hundreds of dishes, unlimited drinks, free dessert, years of customer loyalty, and families that have been eating there every weekend for years. Now ask yourself, how good do your 3 signature entrees have to be before someone gives up everything they're already getting? And that's the position that modern live service games launch into. They're not trying to beat another restaurant. They're trying to convince people to leave a buffet they've been eating at for 10 years. That's an almost impossible challenge. And here's the part that I think gets overlooked. Every time one of those buffets adds another dish, everyone else has to add another dish too. Not because it's better, but because players now expect it. Once I started looking at the problem this way, another pattern appeared. Developers aren't just making new content anymore. They're maintaining expectations. Think about what a modern live service game actually has to support. Last season's weapons, last season's cosmetics, balance patches, events, battle passes, bug fixes, community requests. Every successful update creates another promise. And promises get expensive. Because once players experience a new feature, they expect it to keep improving. Every update becomes the new baseline. And every baseline creates more work. More work creates more pressure. More pressure creates shorter deadlines. And shorter deadlines usually mean lower quality updates. Eventually, the developers stop building the future, and they start spending most of their time keeping up with the past. The game became a machine that constantly needs feeding, and every month that machine gets hungrier and hungrier. That's why I don't think this is a creativity problem. I don't even think it's a talent problem. I think it's a math problem. The expectations have been growing faster than developers can realistically build. So maybe the lesson isn't that live service games don't work. I don't think the evidence supports that. Fortnite is still here, even though it just had a round of layoffs. Warframe is still growing. Path of Exile continues to build one of the most dedicated communities in gaming. These games didn't prove that live service was impossible. They proved something much more interesting. They proved that players are willing to invest thousands of hours into a game if that game respects the investment they're making. Because after looking at all this, I don't think the industry failed because it chased live service. I think it failed because it confused engagement with value. Those sound like the same thing, but they're not. Getting someone to log in every day isn't the same as giving them a reason to want to. Stretching a player's playtime isn't the same as making their time meaningful. For years, publishers optimized for those numbers. Daily and monthly active users, session length, battle pass completion. Every spreadsheet told them the exact same thing. Keep players here longer. So that's exactly what they did. They added more systems, more currencies, challenges, checklists, more things players felt like they had to do. Until eventually, playing the game started feeling a lot like punching a clock. And that's the irony. The harder the industry tried to make players stay, the more it taught them to leave. Because once every game asks for all your time, eventually none of them get it. And that's the hidden trap. The industry didn't just create bigger live service games. It created an audience whose expectations grew faster than any development team could realistically keep up with. And once that happened, every new game launched into a race it was never designed to win. But here's the part that actually gives me hope. I think the industry is finally starting to realize this. Look at the games that people keep recommending today. They're not the ones trying to dominate every minute of your life. They're the ones that let you leave and make you excited to come back. Warframe doesn't panic when you take a break. Path of Exile expects you'll leave between leagues. And even games like No Man's Sky built their reputation slowly, update after update and year after year. None of them depended on convincing millions of players to never stop playing. They focused on giving the people who were there a reason to stay. That's a completely different philosophy. It's not about building the biggest audience overnight. It's about earning trust and then protecting it. Which makes me wonder, maybe we've been measuring live service success the wrong way this entire time. Maybe success isn't launching with 10 million players. Maybe it's still having players 10 years later. Maybe success isn't becoming the biggest game in the world. Maybe it's becoming someone's favorite game. Because if I've learned anything, it's that the future of live service probably doesn't belong to the companies trying to own every second of your life. It belongs to the companies that understand something much simpler. Players don't want endless content. They want meaningful reasons to come back. Those aren't the same thing. And I think that's the lesson this industry had to learn the hard way. If you've watched this far, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.
Chain me up.
All right.
Oh, man,
All
get
right,
my $5 on me.
All right, bro.
Man, get my $5 on me. Ah! Get my $5! Get my $5! Get my motherfucking $5, man. Man, stop playing me, man. Get my $5! Ah!